We're going to be talking about our HR case management solution. My name is Christina Sinopoli. I'm the marketing manager here. And right off the bat, I just want to make sure everyone knows this webinar is scheduled for only 30 minutes. So I'm going to keep the intro pretty light and jump into the content you're here for. I do want to point out that the webinar is being recorded. So if you do have to jump off early for any reason, you'll be able to watch a recording of the webinar. It will be shared on our website in about a week, and you'll all be notified since you all registered. So again, we're very excited for today's webinar. We were always happy to have Matt Hawk on hand as our presenter. Having completed over 6 HR case management projects to date, Matt has incredible experience with developing and implementing solutions beyond the IT department. Matt, if I could just get you to say hello real quick so folks can hear your voice.
Hey everyone, real excited to be here.
Thanks. So just some logistics really quickly. When it comes to webinar participation, we want you to be active. So when a question comes to mind, just go ahead and enter it into the question box in the GoToWebinar panel. And we'll try to get it in front of Matt at the right time. If not, we can address it at the end if there's time. We also have some poll questions today. So we'll be launching polls on the slides that have a poll icon in the bottom right corner. So be on the lookout for those, and then they will be shared. The results will be shared in real time. So without further delay, I'll pass things off to Matt, who can start the webinar.
Thanks, Christina. So our agenda for today is to look at HR case management, but we'll start with our view of HR shared services generally, because case management, of course, is an important part of shared services. So we'll look at some of the chaos that we see within our customers when we start working with them and the solution to that. We'll look at case management more in depth, kind of provide a definition of what it is, what it isn't. I'll also share with you some information about ServiceNow within a broader HR architecture, so alongside other HR applications. And then we'll talk briefly about Fruition Partners' accelerated approach to HR case management, and I'll finish with a brief demo of HR case management. So to get started, we'll look at shared services and the kind of the chaotic situation that a lot of employees face within their organization. An employee asking a simple question like, how do I add a dependent? Sometimes that can involve searching past emails from HR. Maybe there's a SharePoint out there, a wiki. They may end up having to email HR. They may call HR. So there's a lot of ways to get that information. And then once an HR generalist gets involved in it, the HR generalist may or may not be able to help that employee who has a question for HR. And so that generalist, ends up needing to engage an HR specialist for assistance. And that process, without a case management solution, that process usually relies on email. And so through the first 3 steps of this, the employee, the generalist, the specialist, when you're asking for assistance from HR, you have a very ad hoc process, a very chaotic process. And out of this whole thing, you have within HR a practice group or a COE that's trying to make informed decisions about the policies and the benefits programs and other programs that they're launching within the organization. And they're trying to make those informed decisions without really knowing, did the policy that we just initiated last week, is that receiving any inbound questions, concerns? How many questions and concerns are coming in? Are we updating our knowledge base information and publishing that back out to the organization? And is that having an effect on the amount of support that our generalists and our specialists are having to provide out to the organization? So in general, there's not an informed decision-making process going on. And so we'll be looking at how case management addresses not just the informed decision-making, but answering basic questions such as, are issues actually resolved? When was it resolved? Who were the people involved when somebody asks HR for assistance? It's not always just that person themselves. It may be a manager that's involved. It may be that HR is getting a call from a spouse and it's actually on behalf of an employee. Where did it take place? Sometimes that's difficult to answer with emails. And how do you categorize them? How many questions were about the drinking policy versus how many questions were about the new benefits enrollment program versus gym membership? How were they assigned? Who actually got involved in answering that question? Was it just the generalist who was able to answer it, or did it go to the specialist? How does this relate to policies, frequently asked questions? What kind of reporting can we get from this chaotic process? Do we know how quickly these cases were closed? How many cases we had? Are we trending up or down month to month? And is there any way that we can audit who has been looking at these cases or who's been updating them? Or enforce any sort of security policy that says certain types of cases, like employee relations cases, need to be handled by a specific team and not other teams within HR. So this sort of chaotic situation doesn't really lend itself very well to any of the controls or any of the business intelligence that from a practice group or a COE standpoint you'd really want to see coming out of your shared service process. And so, of course, that person is left to ask, what am I basing my decisions on? So through HR case management, we look to structure this process through the combination of, at the beginning, through the combination of an HR portal, which enables the submission and review of cases. It also continues to support emailing HR, calling HR. Those are all still supported in addition to the portal. But now when the employee, the self-service employee, is engaging HR, they're doing so in a manner where HR is actually having a recorded or a ticketed interaction. They actually have an HR case which represents that question that or concern or that ask for assistance that came in from the employee. And not only do they have a record of that, but then if they do need to engage the level 2 specialist for assistance, now there's actually task records that track when that interaction between HR team members occurs. And so now we can answer all of the questions we couldn't answer before. We know the categories and how it was assigned. We know how it relates to articles, policies, frequently asked questions. We know whether or not the case is resolved. We know the people and places involved. And of course, we have the business intelligence to understand how our trends are going over time. Are we getting more or less questions related to our benefits program, for example? And also, the case management system gives you a place to actually enforce some level of security governance. And it gives you a place to actually be able to see who has seen or updated and touched each of these interactions. So actually, before we move on, I think we have our first poll. And Christina?
Yep, so I'm going to launch the poll, and if you guys can just answer, I'll give you about 20 seconds. So I'm going to launch the first one right now. So how does your HR team handle requests and inquiries today? So please select one of the following. HR has a shared email box or some other ad hoc process. HR has its own ticketing system or case management tool. HR shares a ticketing tool with IT, other, or I don't know. So I'm going to give everyone about 5 more seconds, and then I'll close it and we can check out the results. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'll share the results. So it looks like 62% have a shared email box or some other ad hoc process.
Great, thanks, Christina. So let's dive into case management a little bit further. As we described in the previous slide, it's about giving that employee efficient access to HR information and assistance. We do want to point out, though, that case management is not just a tool. It's about people, process, and technology. So you can see in the previous slide that there's a whole process that's being facilitated that involves the generalists, the specialists, and of course the employee themselves. And case management is really about repeatability and being able to measure the process of providing HR support out to the organization. So what do these tickets actually contain? What do they look and feel like? Well, they typically contain questions or issues with benefits and compensation or other HR types of services. They could be policy questions or concerns. They could be complaints about the workplace if you're supporting your employee relations program through the case management process. There's plenty of other HR topics. And then sometimes these cases end up having attached forms or links to other services. So if an employee asks for how to make a payroll deduction change and you use a self-service portal with ADP for them to be able to do that themselves, that case interaction is going to end up with the generalist referring the employee to that portal, making sure that they can log in and make the change. Forms can also be attached to cases. But what's really important is probably the next slide, or the next point here, which is that case management, we often deploy case management alongside 3 other really important capabilities. And those are HR request management, which takes the attachments out of the process. It takes the Word documents and the PDF documents that have to get sent back and forth and actually turns them into forms or e-forms that people can actually complete within ServiceNow. So we'll often deploy case management alongside 5 to 7 or 8 e-forms for our HR customers. Forms like the tuition reimbursement form or the position change form or the job requisition form. We also deployed along self-service portals. We saw in an earlier slide that a self-service portal is a critical piece of the overall shared service process. And of course, we'll also deploy it alongside knowledge base so that not only are you doing ticketing, but you're publishing information out to the organization. Case management is not a whole bunch of HR systems you already have. It's not your core HR system. So it's not Workday, it's not Oracle, PeopleSoft. It's not your payroll, your time and attendance. It's not your absence management benefits. These are all systems of record or transactional systems within HR that the case management process and really service management really stands alongside and just structures the way that employees are able to interact with HR for support and for assistance. So along those lines, I thought I'd share with you kind of an architectural view of how ServiceNow fits within a broader HR organization's systems. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that typically we'll end up providing a self-service capability that embeds or links from a corporate HR portal that may already be out there. And then we'll also often end up integrating with HR applications such as an applicant tracking system or some third-party provider. I mentioned the ADP example earlier. Aon Hewitt may be involved in servicing certain types of HR tickets, so you may need to be able to send certain cases to them, so that's a typical integration. Of course, we integrate with email so that your employees can continue to interact with service or with HR through an email process so that they're not having to go to ServiceNow itself.
Hey Matt, sorry to interrupt, but I do think this could be a good time to launch the poll, and we can see, what is everyone's core HR system. Might be helpful for the rest of the slide. So yep. I'm just going to launch the poll so we can find out. So here we go. So what is your core HR system? Oracle, PeopleSoft, SAP, Workday, other, I don't know. So I'll give you about 10 more seconds to answer. And I'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's share the results. And it looks like the majority is other for the core HR system.
Sure. And we've interacted with a few other core HR systems. Ultipro is one example that comes to mind. I'm actually a little surprised by that result, to be honest. So we'll be eager to learn more about your customer, your environment. But the role that core HR plays within the architecture is that a lot of our customers are looking to use their core HR system to really augment and enhance the quality of data that's coming into ServiceNow in terms of metadata. So the locations, the users, the groups, that information is usually best made available from a core HR system rather than a directory. Depending on the quality of your Active Directory data, either Active Directory or some other LDAP directory. A lot of our customers increasingly are starting to pull that information in directly from core HR, so that can play an important role. And of course, the integration, you can see the dashed line here, also goes into core HR. Integrations such as updating an employee file following a request process within ServiceNow would be a classic example. So this is sort of the landscape of ServiceNow within the broader HR architecture. What I wanted to talk about briefly, though, is kind of the challenges we find that are unique to HR case management and unique to deploying in ServiceNow. So one of the challenges, of course, is using shared email in the first place. We talked about the challenges earlier about not really learning from that process. There can be some hesitance to share a ticketing tool with IT, so we want to address that as well. Our customers often are cataloging their HR services for the first time. So when they stand up a case management system and we ask, what are the categories or what are the services that you support, from benefits to verification of employment and everything in between, sometimes our customers are putting that list together for the first time. Our HR customers sometimes have very complex routing. HR, unlike IT, will often have very distributed services. So there will be local HR offices around the world, or even just within the United States, there will be local HR offices. Services are usually in a state of flux, where some of them are starting to be assimilated into a central shared service team. And so dealing with that structure can be a challenge that we want to be able to address. And of course, engaging other service organizations besides HR is a challenge we want to make sure we have a good solution for. So in each of these areas, these are where we focused our accelerator capability to build on top of what ServiceNow offers out of the box. So ServiceNow, as you may or may not know, provides an HR case management, what they call HR service automation. They provide that plugin in their Dublin version, and it's been enhanced in Eureka. And so we laid out some of the capabilities that you get from ServiceNow by purchasing that plugin. What we've done is added capabilities on top of that and structured an accelerated project around those capabilities. So ServiceNow provides core ticketing capability. We add that notion of intake, operational reports and metrics, and support for smart signatures, which give you branded emails that go out to your organization with your HR branding. You can use it as a way to promote certain HR initiatives and so on. I'm going to show you in our demo that we provide some additional security enhancements to protect HR data both within HR and from the prying eyes of IT administration. We can also provide you, on the next point down, we can provide you a best practices services list. So as you start to put together your list from benefits to verification of employment, you'll have a best practice list to compare yours against. We have a routing engine to share with you that enables what we call hierarchical location routing, which can be important. If you need all questions for gym membership to route to a single team globally versus questions about COBRA needing to route to a local HR office, those are the types of scenarios that we can handle. And we have a unified service delivery framework for being able to streamline the passing off or the interaction between HR and IT. Classic example is someone calling HR for assistance because they can't log into a portal, ends up being a password situation that IT needs to support. So all of this adds up to a lot of time that we can save since we've solved these problems, we've learned from it, and we've put it into an accelerator update set. These are capabilities that we can shave months off of your implementation project by providing them on day one. And briefly, I'll dive into this more in the demo, but one of the goals that we strive for is providing HR security and self-sufficiency so that HR can have some control over their ServiceNow instance without always having to rely on IT. And did I miss a poll question? Or
no, there was just a question that came through. Is this using the HR module in Dublin or something else?
Yeah, so we actually provide the accelerator functionality on top of the Dublin HR service automation plugin. So you purchase HR from ServiceNow, and then we provide the accelerator during the implementation project with Fruition Partners. So the implementation and the accelerator are all given to you on top of the HR module you purchased from ServiceNow.
And we're running low on time, so I'll let you decide, Matt, if you want me to launch the next poll, or you could just go ahead with the demo.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and dive in real quick. One of the capabilities that I wanted to show you is when you get phone calls coming into HR, this will give you a sense of several capabilities. When you get a phone call coming into a shared service center, it's real easy, of course, to identify who that caller is. But now we see that this caller is actually located in Tokyo. And so I'm going to pick a service here, such as disability. And so, maybe they have a question, question about a recent reimbursement. But what you can see is over on the right, just based on the two pieces of information I supplied, the caller and that they have a question about disability, this is now going to be serviced by the APAC Service Center. So all of that routing is automated. And in fact, you can actually see the routing rules that are in effect for making that route possible. So again, this is really important when you have a combination of local HR offices and central shared services and sometimes regional offices in between. Keeping track of who's servicing what starts to get complex. And so you want to have a good routing engine for making that possible. And so that brings us next to the HR case ticket itself, which it looks like we're having a little bit of a technical issue. It looks like it did create the HR case. And in this case, it actually says it was routed to HR Service Center APAC. So at this point, I would transfer the call, or I would inform the caller that a representative from Service Center APAC will be in touch with them. Oh, I know what the problem was. I think I was trying to run that as an IT administrator. That's what the problem was. And so now, of course, we have the HR case ticket with the caller identified, what the issue was about. And this particular one can easily now be rerouted if there is the need to reroute. I can escalate, I can request assistance. So, the classic example I discussed during the slide earlier was asking for assistance from a benefits specialist. So I may need to ask for assistance from HR Benefits Global. And now this actually creates a task over to that global benefits team to triage the second task. So in addition to that basic capability, I also mentioned earlier that there's additional security requirements that we want to be able to address. So I'll just show briefly, I touched on the HR case table earlier where you see all of these tickets. You can see benefits, you can see HRIS, employee relations. So I have visibility to all tickets. Maybe I'm a service center employee or I'm an HR manager who has this visibility. But different people within HR have different views of that same table. So if they come to HR case now, they'll see a more reduced list. So now benefits has been taken out of this list for Sheldon. He'll never see benefits tickets unless he's specifically assigned one of those tickets. So that's what we find within HR is unlike IT, where anyone in IT can see everything in IT, within HR there's usually a partitioning where certain teams can see certain things. And not only that, but I'll impersonate an IT administrator so that when I go to that same table now as an IT administrator, I don't see anything at all. So you don't want your IT administrators poking around within your HR records. And even if the administrator comes as an administrator, usually has the ability and tries to add themselves to a group. Oh, there's the group signature, by the way. If the administrator tries to add themselves to this HR group so that they can gain access, they'll actually get this error message. So you can actually set up designated administrators for HR that are separate from your IT administrators. So that's just a little hint at some of the capabilities that we've added on top of the module from ServiceNow. The routing, the signature capability, the additional security layer for administrators and even within HR, the ability to easily task across groups using that little wizard pop-up I showed you. And there's other capabilities as well. But I think with the little bit of time we have left, I want to pass things back to Christina actually there's one slide I wanted to share with you. If you want to learn more about the accelerator, your HR team may be considering standing up a shared service practice or is in the process of implementing it. It would be great to see you at HR Tech, and I think we have a quick poll question before we go.
Yep, we just wanted to see how many of you will be there, and I'm going to launch this poll really quick. Yep. So is your HR team attending the conference? Yes, no, possibly, I don't know. And I'll give you 2 more seconds. 1, 2, closing. And a lot of people don't know, so maybe you should. And you'll see Matt there, and he can demo this for you live.
Yep, it'd be great to meet some of you out at HR Tech. And we also wanted for some of the technical administrators who may be in the audience today, Christina, do you want to talk about ThruDevCon real quick?
Sure, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're holding our 2nd annual ThruDevCon conference in Chicago, October 5th to the 9th. You'll be able to join fellow ServiceNow developers, executives, and process owners for a comprehensive program that demonstrates the full potential of the ServiceNow platform via hands-on technical-focused curriculum. But we'll also have our process track this year, which is new. So check out the ThruDevCon page to register and for more information on tracks, labs, and conference rates.
There was one last question, whether HR is available on Eureka. I should have said earlier, it is Dublin and later. So yes, it is definitely available on both Dublin and Eureka. And in fact, if you're a holdout and you're still on Calgary, we can provide the accelerator capabilities without the plugin running underneath it as well. So we do have a solution for Calgary. So the answer is yes, yes, and yes. What a great way to end the webinar, right?
Yeah, excellent. So thanks again to everyone who joined, and a recording will be shared with you sometime next week, so you'll be notified via email. If you asked a question and it wasn't answered, Matt will follow up with you directly in the next couple of days. And if another question comes to mind after today, if you're interested in learning more, feel free to reach out to us using the contact info listed on this slide. Thanks again, and we'll see you at the next webinar, everyone.